Greetings to all of you. Thank you for taking your time off to come for this technology series webinar. In this edition, we are going to be addressing the ISO 9001, specifically with emphasis on the design and development engineering community, not only in terms of the processes themselves, but also in terms of what is required in audit compliance. The intent of the ISO 9001 for new product development, for people looking at ways and means to succeed in the marketplace with new products and technologies. We hope you would benefit from this webinar. The agenda of today's presentation is going to be on Empowered Design with ISO 9001, which was revised in 2015, going through quite a few changes, the mandatory requirements that have to be fulfilled, the checklist for the audit compliance, and the benefits of the ISO 9000 driven processes for design and development. Before we delve deeper into it, for people who do not know us, we would like to give a 3-slide introduction towards what we are and what we do. Our vision is engineering development through effective partnership with our customers by accomplishing the vision through 3 mission statements, namely imparting leading-edge technology in terms of by training and development, problem solving and new product development through consulting services, and providing software solutions and technical support in those software solutions. EGS, since inception in 1993, after I returned from the US and started EGS India for our US operations, we have been concentrating in 3 different verticals, namely the engineering services, the software solutions, and the technology training. In the engineering services, we work in the area of new product development, product design and development, systems design engineering, design validation, dimensional management for design verification, and value engineering. These are the different areas in which we take up projects and do. On the software side, we have been associated with Dassault Systems since 1999 and working with them in implementing their SolidWorks suite of CAD, CAE, and PDM solutions. Now it is 3D Experience. And then we have developed our own brand line of products under the name Live, specifically in the area of product lifecycle management, advanced product quality planning, quality management systems, and quality control tools, QC tools. Our flagship academics is a technical training division of EGS India, working in the area of providing. We are known for providing training in computer-aided engineering, finite element analysis, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, tolerance stacks under the dimensional management, and then the failure modes and effects analysis, design failure modes and effects analysis, process FMEA, so on and so forth, and popular CAD tools and finite element tools. Now, coming back to the webinar emphasis, our offices are in Kodambakkam, Chennai, headquarters. We have a large presence in Coimbatore. We have an office, an independent functioning office over there, and then it is coming under operation. And then we have for our training. So that I will be audible for the rest of the people. Thank you. The objectives of ISO 9000 is to incorporate a quality management system in any organization. Quality, not for the quality personnel alone, but for the entire team and stakeholders in the organization, starting from management all the way to logistics. Help organizations become more efficient. The thrust is on customer satisfaction. This keeps getting repeated on and on in the ISO 9000 documentation, enhancing the productivity of the organization while addressing risks and opportunities that come as a result of this due diligence in the QMS implementation. The emphasis on risks in terms of processes, risks in terms of the products that we develop, why the processes can fail, why the product can fail, so on and so forth. What opportunities come as a result of the due diligence by implementing these processes as enumerated by the ISO 9001. Now, the cue has to be taken from the 7 quality management principles that ISO lays emphasis upon. The first one is engagement of people. Second one is customer focus. Third one is leadership, the management, the leadership in the teams. The process-driven approach away from person-centric approach. Improvement at every step of the way. Evidence-based decision making. And the relationship management with customers, suppliers, and internal cross-functional team members. These 7 quality management principles are the starting point for the implementation of the ISO 9001 in any organization. People are certified in ISO 9001. The spirit lies in understanding how this is going to be beneficial for the organization, not in terms of your commitments with regard to statutory requirements or your customers require it, but with regard to how your product can be enhanced in terms of its quality and reliability, and how the customer experience matters to you more in terms of getting more orders from the same customers. Mind you, the quality management principles as enshrined in the ISO is not related to the product manufacturing quality alone. It is for any process that we put in the organization. The emphasis of today's webinar is on design and development, no doubt, but whether it is the inquiry process, the sales process, the marketing process, the product design and development process, the manufacturing process, the inspection process, the logistical process, any different way in which you look at it, these 7 quality management principles have to be enshrined for us to benefit from those processes. If you are going to go to marketing your product through web-based marketing, through social media marketing, again, these 7 principles come into picture. So it is a misnomer to think that ISO 9000 is somebody else's prerogative. It is everyone's prerogative as a stakeholder in the organization in terms of its existence, profitability, and reach to our customers. Now, the design and development, that's what we are going to be talking about in the next few slides in this webinar. Our focus needs to be on establishment, implementation, and maintenance of a design and development process. We move away from person-centric approach to process-driven approach. That way, the knowledge resides in the process and it puts to reuse effectively for the organizational benefits. So determining the stages and the controls required in establishing the process to achieve the goals that we started about in the objectives slide earlier. The process needs to be appropriate to ensure that the realization of the product happens, and in short, the focus has to be on the characteristics of the product, definition of that. In other words, in this process-centric approach, upfront statement of requirement for the product takes mainstay, and that requires quite a bit of due diligence. The emphasis, no doubt, is on design and development planning activity. A lot of times we have seen people talking about planning for projects, very rarely for products. If it is new product development, yes, to some extent people go through planning, people go through project management and things like that. However, for generic standard products, people really don't talk about planning in design and development, while ISO emphasizes on that quite a bit. The next one is enumeration of the activities and tasks for the planned actions. And the actions that would affect the performance of the planned activities need to be revisited or kept upon in focus. The emphasis of ISO 9000 is on that, and meeting the requirements of resources needed to implement the plan to achieve the stated objectives. A lot of times we have seen that we put grand plans in place, but the efforts are few and far between, primarily because the resources are thin. One person donning different hats in the organization, doing different works. That is not encouraged by ISO 9000. The management has to commit the resources adequately for ensuring that the objectives are met. Same is the case for the design and development. The cross-functional team members could come from design department, validation department, manufacturing, inspection, which is quality, in all these put together. But in the design and development, the cross-functional team is the author of the book called the product. The design department is only a publisher of the drawing. I'm not trying to trivialize the design department. I'm trying to enhance the scope of the cross-functional team in which the design forms the cog, the center cog, the wheel, which drives and keeps everything in motion. The last one is clear definition of roles and responsibilities in the organization. These are the things which ISO 9000 emphasizes upon in the quality paradigm that has been put together in 2000, revised in 2015. Now, it goes to say that the process-driven activities need to be given emphasis. The workflow enumeration, tracking the progress as you go through the workflow in the design and development phase, tracing the history so that to see what went right, what went wrong. You see that? And the process improvement, continuous process improvement is what the emphasis is upon. What do I mean by continuous process improvement? I want to improve the sales by 5% in the current financial year as compared to last year. Why do I need 5% sale increase? Because I want 5% improvement or 10% improvement in my bottom line profitability. So the costs of 85% of the product cost is determined by design, 15% by the rest of the things including operations, logistics, so on and so forth. If 85% of the product cost is going to be decided by design, then design and development needs to take the initiative in ensuring that the cost goals in the company are met in terms of processes. So a 10% improvement in product profitability nevertheless looks at some reduction in putting together value analysis and value engineering in the organization to make sure that the 10% goals of profitability improvement, not profit by itself, the improvement in the values, its percentage that is met with. The management needs to be looking upon the improvement as Professor Yamaguchi says, as corroborated by Bajaj himself in a presentation, in a heart-to-heart talk. So the next one is documentation of the processes, the status where the processes lie, the changes to the processes, either because of improvement or because of things learned, and the stakeholders update. The stakeholders could be people in the design and development, management, customer, suppliers, any person whose life is being touched by the activities of design and development engineering functions. Now, please mind you that these processes need to be visible to stakeholders, verifiable, and measurable. We make it visible by putting it in charts and putting it on boards. Sometimes we make it verifiable. Checks and balances at every step, in Excel sheets, probably in emails, sometimes giving some reports. We are verifying it. Measurable, so that the improvement can be attributed subsequently down the line. This is exactly where data-driven decision making comes into picture. So, three things: VVM, visibility, verifiability, and measurability. If it cannot be measured, don't put it in the process. If it cannot be verified, of what good is the process? These are the things which needs to be placed emphasis upon in ISO 9000 according to them. So now the next stage is when we look at the ISO 9000, we look at the section 8, the different parts of the section which deal with different areas is shown in this picture, in this slide. The need for the products and the processes are identified. The design and development planning comes first in 832. 833 comes with the inputs. Then the design and development process itself happens. And then the outputs which are measurable in terms of 835. And 834 is nothing but your controls, which then comes through 836, which is for your changes which need to be tracked. So the cyclical approach of the product development is very clearly encapsulated and captured in the ISO 9000 and in this chart provided to you as given by ISO, so that the completed product design and development is successful in every measure. The design review is a part and parcel of the process where all stakeholders from the three departments of design, manufacturing, inspection, in addition to the ombudsman, who is the management, are brought into this. The design review happens as a result of this. This gives you the design and development process. Now, the emphasis in this webinar is going to be on the 5 pieces, namely the planning, the inputs, the controls, the outputs, and the changes that are driven in a process-centric design and development approach. The first stage is planning. In planning, we determine the activities, the nature and duration of each and every one of those activities, conducting design review, which could be basic reviews or it could be detailed reviews, the process which needs to be enumerated in terms of verification and validation. The planning alone is put together here. The activities that we do is only as good as the plan. The plan is only as good as being measurable, verifiable, subsequently down the line. So when we are putting this together, it is nothing but the WBS in a project management. You may come back and say, but I don't do projects. But you do products, you develop drawings. No, I manufacture based on drawings which is coming in. Yes, what about the control plan? What about the inspection plan? What about the gauges and fixtures design? In all these areas, design comes into picture. It's inescapable. It need not be product design alone. In every aspect of it, planning is the first step and the most important step that needs to be taken with the right step forward, so that we will be able to gauge it, measure it, verify it, and comply with it, so that audit compliance becomes a no-brainer. You don't need to shut shutters to create documents, because next week we have an audit. Assigning tasks from the activities is the planning step, and the clear roles and responsibilities, who needs to do what, which task has to be done by whom or which personnel, who is going to monitor it, who is going to approve it, what are the deliverables for the tasks, what are the natures of those deliverables. For example, it could be a Kano analysis report, it could be an FMEA report, it could be a failure, it could be a design for manufacture and assembly report, it could be a design for quality report. Any one of them, what are the deliverables? It could be a drawing, it could be an inspection drawing, inspection sheet, it could be a process flow diagram. All these are deliverables according to the tasks which get enshrined in the planning, and the documentation of the information to demonstrate that the requirements have been met. In other words, the life cycle of the documents need to be connected to the tasks which are enumerated in the activities in the WBS, so that in a cyclical manner, the whole thing goes through in a systematic manner, so at any point of time you are able to see it, it is visible, it is verifiable, it is measurable. Next is the requirements for the subsequent provision of the products. In other words, after you have signed off on the drawing, who are the people who are going to be involved, the stakeholders subsequently down the line in manufacturing the products? They are the people, the material, the machine, the drawings, the acceptance criteria, and the control. They all have to find themselves in the planning document or in the planning process. This is a very critical phase of the design and development process in any organization, even though you may be a build to print supplier. If you are a build to print supplier, still you need to go through material, people, machine, and looking at the drawings, which are the inspection dimensions, what are the acceptance criteria that needs to be put forth, how you are going to go about verifying it, how you are going to stay with the, you have the specification limits on the drawing, you have the control limits that you are going to be putting together so that the process does not deviate and the centrality of the specification limits is adhered to upon. Simple planning. So this is where it comes in. So the next stage, the first stage is the planning. The next stage is providing the input. The input necessarily has to have the customer requirements, the customer specifications, the functional requirements as desired by the customer. The customer could be giving you an order to develop a product, or the customer could be based on a customer survey that you're coming up with a new product. So the functionality is put together. Please understand, the statement of requirement that you put together is more important than the product itself. If the statement of requirement is not given the due diligence upfront, the product has more probability of failure. I will give a simple example. You develop a pump. You say it is developed for normal operating conditions. What do you mean by normal operating conditions? For 30-35 degrees at room temperature. Okay? How are you going to test it? Or we will be doing an accelerated durability testing. Okay, in the durability testing, how long will the pump run? Or it will run for probably 8 hours, 10 hours continuously, 20 hours continuously, like that. So what does the pump do? It delivers the pressure head required, the work gets done by the fluid, goes back to the reservoir, then comes into the pump again. This is a closed loop system you are putting together for testing it, right? Yes. Now as you keep doing work on the fluid, what happens? The temperature of the fluid goes up. When the temperature of the fluid goes up, in your accelerated durability testing, the temperature is going to go up. Yes. So how much temperature can go up? Of 60-65 degrees. So what's your normal temperature for which you are going to design? 60-65 degrees. So the seals should withstand 60-65 degrees, not 30 degrees. You see how we go back drilling into each and every aspect of the functional requirement that has to be put in place. The performance requirement, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable. I repeat, what is unacceptable has to be put on the piece of paper. And then the cost requirements, the goals for the costs. Otherwise the product is not going to succeed. From the cost you get the cost of precision. For things gone wrong you get the cost of poor quality from previous similar inputs, similar products which have been designed. The quality and the reliability goes in measurable manner. These are the inputs, the serviceability criteria, the statutory requirements, the regulatory compliance, and any other special requirements have to be put in place. Please understand, the above needs to be reviewed as was given in the design and development process earlier. Its results looked upon, new requirements and changes need to be documented and notified to the relevant team members. This is what the standard says. So if any one of these things is going to change, the stakeholders have to be notified automatically through the process, not by manual methods. Please understand this is process-centric, not person-specific. So the design and development review is across all the areas, starting with the user needs and the inputs, the process, the output and the service, and then the verification and validation being an intrinsic part of output to input verification of service to the actual needs compliance. This emphasis cannot be done more because this is sacrosanct in the ISO 9000. Okay, sir, we are doing all these things. What about the improvement in performance? 10% improvement, 15% improvement, 5% improvement. It could be cost, time, or quality. One of the three parameters. That's exactly where measurable processes visible have to be put in place. So the design and development input could be based on standards and codes, ASME Section 8 Division 2. It could be based on TS 16949, APQP and the PPAP process. It could be any one of the standards. GD&T based on ASME Y19, Y14.5, either 1994 or 2009 or 2018 standard, or the equivalent ISO standard or the BIS standard or the BS standard. It could be any one of them. Safety standards, regulatory standards, environmental standards. So many things are coming in. So the information derived from previous design activities could also form a part of the input. Now comes the most important thing. As I said earlier in the objectives, the risk part of it and the opportunities part of it have to be enumerated. The risk is the potential consequences of failure of the product. This is in terms of risk assessment. There are two kinds of risk that ISO talks about. One is the risk associated with the process. You have put together the process. What is the risk that the process will not meet the requirement? The second one is the product risk in terms of its failure to deliver upon the function, performance, quality, and reliability. So this is where the failure modes and effects analysis, or the failure modes and effects and criticality analysis, come into picture. The risk priority number that comes as a result of the severity, the classification, the occurrence, right, and the defects. Based on that, the risk priority number that we get, that has to be the basis for your key characteristics on your drawings. You see where it is verifiable. You see those key characteristics are supposed to be measurable. So in other words, when I'm putting together the drawing, the input for the drawing should be coming from your design, failure modes, and defects analysis. From your manufacturing process, in terms of the process capability, the CPCPK, nothing but your process centrality and the process spread. Coming from your cost of precision, cost of poor quality, from your ERP systems. Coming from your design for assembly, design for manufacturing. All these are inputs to the design and development process to come up with the product. Products and services is where this comes in. Services is also there, but nevertheless it's a part of the product development engineering, right? So we are concentrating on the product here. So the failure risk has to be enumerated, has to be brought upon very clearly as an input into the system. So the input has to be unambiguous, complete in all aspects, consistent with the requirements, could be from the previous design. There are three kinds of design. One is derivative designs from existing designs. Second one is evolutionary design, where you take a design but you come up with a completely different design, but the mother of the design is still the same. And third one is innovative designs. In all these three conditions, these are relevant. So enhancing the effectiveness and augmenting the organizational good practices have to be a part of this. Safety, handling, and transportation criteria, and then ergonomics, another thing. Resolution of conflicts from multiple inputs has to be demonstratively shown there. Once the input is in place, then you put together what are called as the controls. In the design, and when the design and development is being enumerated upon, the controls ensures that the implemented processes are effective. The deterministic results are gathered from the input and the design and development process. Deterministic results. Measurable, verifiable results. Review to ensure that the alignment with the customer requirements as given in the input, as reflected in the input, is provided at every stage of the activities performed in the planning stage. So whatever is given in the planning stage, everywhere you have a control put together. See how beautiful it has been put together? Any company which is working in new product development, which has never done this in the past, puts together a process like this and institutionalizes this, is bound to succeed because of the checks and balances in the system. This is not merely for some audit compliance and certifications, ladies and gentlemen. This is for new product development. This is how companies succeed in the marketplace. The emphasis cannot be any much more as what it is now. The design and development controls, again, the verification and the validation part of it. Verification is the requirements are met, alternative calculations are provided as basis for your dimensioning on the drawings, comparison to proven earlier designs, to satisfy yourself that the design is okay, undertaking attests and demonstrations, proof of concepts, so on and so forth. Then comes the validation, marketing trials, testing to usage conditions, operational testing, customer and end testing and feedback. Documenting this is extremely important. So in all these cases, we put controls together so that through the processes, the checks and balances are ensuring that the input goes through the process to give the deliverables the output that we require or desire. Design verification, planning and reporting is an intrinsic part of the D&D process. A lot of times we take a component, we build a prototype, we test it. But before we test it, have we done the dimensional verification of all the parameters on the drawings? Of all the key characteristics that were given on the drawing? If the answer is no, of what use is the testing? So the design verification and planning and reporting has to be there in the planning so that the controls can see it and the reports can be taken for measurable objectives have been complied with or not. Dimensional inspection the same way. Process studies to ensure that the process capability is there. Why should a design engineer know about process capability? Absolutely. If you want to maximize your tolerances, one of the methods is sampling. Statistical process control. Instead of looking at the worst case condition in your tolerance stack-up, process capability is absolutely required. To come up with tolerances, after doing a tolerance stack for optimizing your tolerances, it is required. Verification of the drawings for the completeness and the correctness of representation so that downstream people who are going to use those drawings do not assume things is a part of control. The checklists which come as a result of that. It's coming down the line. Linking of the DFMEA and the PFMEA for critical characteristics. Three types of characteristics are there. Critical, essential, desirable. Anything above a certain RPN number is critical. Between certain value and the critical value is essential. Below that is desirable. So like that, if you objectively split, the critical ones at least should have PFMEA linking. So you know they are measurable. All the stakeholders are informed of the changes and the updates. The process routing should be visible. The process capability of the machine should be seen. The risk mitigation plan has to be reviewed continuously. This is the only way firefighting can be avoided subsequently down the line. That's exactly what ISO 9001 emphasizes upon. The design and development control, again looking at if you are doing inspection, if you are doing a first article inspection, let us say, then the repeatability and the reproducibility have to be taken into consideration, right? Repeatability of the gauges of the measuring instrument. Reproducibility is the operator bias quantification. Ensure that the calibration and the operator bias are verified. Only R&R qualified equipment and personnel should be used for inspection. This is process driven. So if you put a digital process together, it will give you only those people who have passed the test in terms of gauge R&R to do the testing, to do the inspection subsequently down the line. It's a no-brainer to comply with this. This control establishes it. Similarly, After you have done the control, they're looking at the output, make sure that the output meets the input requirements. It is adequate for the downstream people to process to develop the product, specifying the monitoring and the measuring requirements with the acceptance criteria. This acceptance criteria is where a lot of people fail. It could be beaten life. It could be clearances, verifiable objectives. When I say verifiable objectives, people who are down on the line, they don't give a damn about what we have done in design. They want everything as measurable parameters. So measurable parameters in terms of quality and reliability is what we have to give here. These are characteristics like that. Then the drawings and the product specification, which includes the preservation details, the material specifications, these are the outputs, the test requirements, the process specifications. Remember, the design and development team is a cross-functional team in which design is there. So the quality plan and the control plan is put together by the relevant cross-functional team members under the supervision of the design department. Why do I say supervision? What we intended in the design has the spirit and the application of being carried forward by the manufacturing and inspection or not. Whose responsibility is it? Design's responsibility. That's exactly where this comes in. And then the control plans, the installation, commissioning, and the service manuals have to be a part of the output. This is what the standard says. Then comes the change. A lot of people have used ERP to implement or a product lifecycle management or a manual process to implement engineering change management. There are two change managements which need to be brought in. One is the engineering change management, the other one is the process change management. If I change a gauge, it is process change management. Design department has to know it. If I change a machine, the process capability has to be brought in. Again, it's a process change. If I do a process flow diagram change or a process routing change, it's a process change. It could be because of a continuous improvement. It could be because of so many other reasons, a downstream, productivity increase, so many things. Or it could be because of the design change itself, which comes under engineering changes. It could be driven by an issue. It could be the containment action is one aspect of issue management. Corrective action and preventive action, they lead to changes. Those changes and what it costs to the company have to be looked upon. ISO emphasizes upon that. The non-conformance and then the revision control is clearly looked upon in terms of tracking those changes, the evolution of the product, and notification automatically to the stakeholders, the approval processes and the review of that, absolutely important. And the things gone right and the things gone wrong, documented for the next design subsequently down the line. Now comes the audit compliance. Subsequently, now that you have put this together, the audit comes in terms of processes. They will audit the process, the people, and the material evidence. People in terms of qualification, people in terms of their ability to get the job done, and the roles and responsibilities. Processes in terms of their visibility to the stakeholders, compliance and changes to the processes in terms of continuous process improvement. And then the document material evidence, the traceability, and the reports from the digital data. Reports from the digital data takes a lot of time to put together if the processes are not digitalized already. So the checklist for audit compliance, we'll be looking at it now. Has the organization developed a process for design and development? Conformance, NC, partial, who is responsible, documentary evidence provided, remarks. It could be internal auditor, it could be external auditor. Internal auditor auditing the design and development department cannot be from the cross-functional team members to eliminate bias. Are there any published documents that defines the D&D process? Are the stakeholders aware and able to access the documents? Are the documents being revised periodically to demonstrate the process improvement by considering the feedback? Could be from the customer. Now, the design and development team, customers are end customers, the sales guys in the organization, the manufacturing, and the inspection people. They are the customers for design and development team, not the end customer alone. Okay. Now, Do the documents have clear methods described to measure the outcome of the processes? Has an approval process been followed to publish the stated documents? See that? These are all questions in checklists that are put together. Have the tasks been enumerated for the activities planned? Is there a clear mechanism to assign the tasks to members? And if it is reassigned to somebody else, why it was reassigned? If there is a delay, what was the reason for the delay? All those things. And the deliverables are clearly given. Is there a mechanism to monitor the task completion of the deliverables in terms of life cycle of the deliverables? Risk assessment of the process itself and the risk mitigation for that have been clearly defined. You see where this is as far as planning is concerned. As far as input is concerned, functional requirements have they been taken? Customer requirements are taken. Give documentary evidences. Warranty and serviceability requirements have been taken. Operational hazards and safety requirements have been taken. This is becoming very important these days. Environmental safeguards and more importantly, afterlife safe disposal has been considered or not? See? Have standard codes adhered to that is as committed by the organization? Have tasks been planned, enumerated according to the plan? Milestones are there. Is there anywhere to assign the milestones? You see how beautiful it is? Deliverables clearly specified for every task. Mechanism to monitor. And then risk assessment in terms of failure modes and the processes. Potential failure modes. Every aspect has to have a risk assessment. Like that, many other inputs have been put together. Last one is the conflicts being identified and addressed or not. There could be conflicts in your requirements. A simple example. One may say tighten the tolerance. Another may say no, loosen the tolerance. Whether you will tighten the tolerance or loosen the tolerance. Everybody will say I will tighten the tolerance. On what basis? Sir, tighten the tolerance. On what basis? It could increase the cost. Why do you want to tighten the tolerance? The other says loosen the tolerance. GD&T says maximize tolerance. Then what decides how to resolve this conflict? The risk priority number in your failure modes decides it. See that? How beautiful the processes are and how ISO nicely puts things together. Then comes the control or the process of capable of delivering on the customer requirements is what control is all about. Roles and responsibilities. See, all these things, if you are putting together on the system, then it becomes easy for you to control. Everybody wants to control the costs. How do you control costs? By stopping purchase orders? No. By monitoring the processes. Targets that you have given. Why they have exceeded the targets? Why there is a cost overrun? All those things we have to look at. Issues is another one. Then comes verification, validation, inspection equipment, calibration, repeatability and reproducibility. All these are part of the checklist in audit compliance. Are the output consistent with the input requirements? Please understand. Output meeting the input requirements is one thing. Output being consistently meeting the input requirement is another thing. The continuous process improvement talks about consistency. That's what is written here. Are the drawings clear and sufficient? A lot of times I've seen people writing in the drawing, if in doubt, ask. There cannot be such statements on the drawings. Why? It has to be unambiguous as far as design and development is concerned, according to ISO 9001. The environmental impact, inspection plan, process plan, have they been put together as output? These are all the compliance questions that people ask, and the material documentation has to be supplied. A lot of people will be going through most of these, but some of these are new in the 2015, or the emphasis is more in the 2015. And then comes the change management. Is change management process visible, traceable, verifiable? Is there an approval process? It's manual or digital? Reasons for a change affecting what are the downstream things it affects? Can you automatically take it from your system? Has risk analysis been done for the changes that are being affected? Is process change communicated to design and vice versa? Engineering change communicated to process people? Are all stakeholders notified? These are all critical. Has impact analysis being done on the customer requirement when the change is happening? ISO mandates it. Has customer approval been obtained? Is management participation visible and affirmative? Your reviews will tell you, your minutes of the meeting will tell you, your approval processes where management is involved will tell you. So many things are there. Has impact analysis been done similar on the changes made? Customer satisfaction improved as a result of this? How do you measure it? How do you verify it? How do you provide evidence? See where it comes from. So essentially, the digital transformation of the ISO 9000 process helps us to make sure that the dynamic performance updates of the indicators for higher efficiency is achievable. That's what ISO 9000 mandates, that it has productivity and efficiency has to be enhanced. Empowered processes help drive innovation on products faster and more effectively. Continuous improvement should be data-driven and intrinsic, not externally driven by auditors. It should be intrinsic and natural in the process itself. Quick response to changes. The pandemic has changed so many things. How we have changed our businesses, how we have changed our processes is possible only with the process-centric approach digitally. Digitally driven enterprises capture more markets and stay ahead of the competition. These are the essentials that are required digitally for people to leverage upon on the ISO 9001. Why? The benefits are, it helps you once you have institutionalized the process and it is automated, that you have enough time to innovate, not to shut down shutters to prepare documents for audit, but use the time and efforts to innovate, to improvise at every step of the way, and to indigenize. If you have reached the limit of improvisation, go back to innovation. Once you innovate, again the next improvisation starts coming into picture. Innovation, improvisation, and indigenization are the three mantras that design and development goals have to achieve. And ISO 9001 just helps you to do that if it is implemented with transparency, preferably with a digital approach in the knowledge millennium that we are living in today. Thank you.